we're very happy this morning to have Certified Site Safety of White Plains make the presentation to our membership. I am now going to turn over the program to Denise Groneman, who is the Executive VP of Certified Safety, and she will introduce our program speaker. Again, many thanks for your participation.
Thank you, Jeff, and welcome. On the table, we have a little bit about our profile, what we do, so what our company does. Today, we're going to be doing a presentation. Michael Gianatasio will be the presenter. Michael serves as Certified Site Safety and Engineering Consultant. Michael holds a BS from Manhattan College with a degree in Civil Engineer. A professional engineer registered in New York, Connecticut, and Florida, he has over 21 years of experience in the construction and safety industry. Michael maintains a New York City DOB Site Safety Manager's license, a FDNY Construction Site Fire Safety Manager's certification, and has many other OSHA certifications. He also serves as an expert witness in the New York State Supreme Court labor laws cases. Please welcome Michael Gianatasio.
Good morning, everyone. First, I'd like to thank the Building Institute for inviting us to this event. Here to speak about everybody's favorite topic, which is OSHA, or OSHA inspections. To get a sense of the crowd, what you do, how many here are owner-developers, would you say? Just Eric? Oh, 2, 3? Okay. And how many are general contractors and subcontractors? Okay. So I'm assuming that a lot of people work for somebody here, because I didn't see a show of hands, right? Okay. Well, under New York State law and federal law, owners and GCs are in the same bucket when it comes to liability on safety and means and methods of construction. So I want everybody to be aware that owners and GCs go hand in hand. You can't push the liability on either one. So it's both responsibilities when it comes to OSHA and New York State labor law to make sure the job site is safe. So going through this PowerPoint which we have here, I'm going to try to go through it pretty quickly because there's a lot of statistics, but why is OSHA important to you, and what rights does an employee have under OSHA? What responsibilities does your employer have, or the employer here have, under OSHA? What are some typical standards, and how are OSHA inspections conducted? And where can you go to get help? So this is a little bit outdated, but in 2013, 4,405 workers were killed on a job site in the United States. Average of 12 workers die every week. 797 Hispanic or Latino workers are killed from work-related injuries in 2013, and nearly 3 million serious workplace injuries and illnesses were reported in 2012. So it's important that we all pay attention to the aspects of OSHA and labor law. So what is OSHA? OSHA is the department, works under the Department of Labor. It has the responsibility to improve worker safety, and it's been around since 1970. Under President Richard Nixon signed the OSHA Act, and OSHA has become a very substantial force in the United States today for workers' rights. So their mission is to ensure a safe and healthful working conditions for men and women by setting and enforcing standards and providing training, outreach, education, and assistance. Some of the things OSHA does are develop job safety and health standards by enforcing them through work site inspections. So show of hands here, how many times have you experienced an OSHA inspection? Okay. And how was that experience? Pretty good, or did you feel like
going to the dentist?
Going to the dentist, okay. So that's good. So when you go to the dentist, right, you want to make sure that you get a cleaning twice a year, right? So what we're here to do, our company, Certified Site Safety, prepares health and safety programs. I'm going to have Denise pass around a typical health and safety program that we prepare that's a requirement by OSHA. And in this health and safety program, there's many topics that are addressed. First and foremost is the responsibility. Who is responsible in your company for OSHA, for a corporate health and safety plan? The owner will designate someone who's a corporate safety director, and that person should be a competent person with the right training, and that person delegates training to the rest of the company. There are many types of OSHA training depending on what you do. If you're a general contractor, you'll take some general classes like an OSHA 30. I recommend all workers take an OSHA 10. In New York City, which 90% of our business is based, New York City is the leader in safety. When it comes to training in New York City, you need an OSHA 10, which is a 10-hour class. Anytime you get on a scaffold, you need an OSHA, a supported scaffold or suspended scaffold certificate. They want to make sure that everybody is trained in the use of their equipment, and everybody has the records to back that up. So a worker has the right to a safe and healthful workplace. They're supposed to know about the hazards and chemicals that they're touching. If they report it, they're required to report an injury to their employer. If they get injured or hurt, they can complain or request hazard correction. They can request training from you. It's your responsibility to train your workers. Hazard exposure and medical records, they can have access to all those records. They can file complaints with OSHA, 1-800-321-OSHA. Everybody knows the number. Everybody has a handheld. They can file a complaint online. And they have the right to participate in an OSHA inspection. So if an OSHA inspector comes on the site, an employee can walk with them and talk to them about your job site. And you cannot retaliate for them voicing their opinion and their rights on the site. So know that. Basic poster on site, which everybody should have, I'm sure it comes with your payroll company, is the OSHA poster, which is a job health and safety poster, which is the law to post on site. Now, there are many posters you need on site in New York State. We recommend that you post them everywhere in your job site trailer if you're on a job site. Your corporate office should have it all posted in the payroll section of your office, or by the copy machine, let's say, or coffee. Going forward, this act was created to protect the rights in the workplace for the employees. The law gives workers important rights to participate in activities to ensure their protection from job site hazards. So, which we want to make sure that you have 50% of what you need when you have an OSHA inspection. What is that? It's a health and safety program which is being passed around right now. It's important to have that program. If you have 5 or less people, the rules are a little bit less stringent, but I'm sure everybody here has 5 or more employees, so that health and safety plan is probably the most important thing, that your company is the base foundation of your company building on the safety compliance with OSHA. It's important also to have a safety data sheet. What's a safety data sheet? Well, if you're working with chemicals, let's say concrete, you can touch lime, you have a chemical exposure to certain fumes. Do you have the right mask? Do you have the right eye protection? Do you have the right training to handle that equipment and that chemical? So it's important that you have the SDS sheets on site in your trailer. And you know what? I get a lot of, when I do inspections and I'm walking with OSHA or I'm called in on an OSHA inspection, everybody says, well, we just started the job site. I don't have a trailer. I don't have anything. So buy yourself a job site box. Have your health and safety program in there, all your safety plans, all your certifications, all your SDS sheets, and many more things that we can help you put together for a compliant inspection. When an OSHA inspector sees you with these files, they know you're serious about safety. They know that you're trying to be compliant, and the inspection will go much easier for you. If you take a bad attitude towards an OSHA inspector and say, well, I don't have to do this, I don't have to do that, it'll turn out pretty bad for you at the end. So we want to make sure that you're compliant. So going through it again, OSHA 300 log. Does everybody know what an OSHA 300 log is? 300A? It's very simple. Put it on the wall. Somebody gets injured or there's an incident or a near miss, just record it. Put it up on the wall. It'll show the OSHA inspector during an inspection that you are recording as required. It'll make everybody aware that, listen, we had a near miss, we had somebody injured on the site, we want to do a correction. You retrain everybody so they don't commit the same accident or incident, and you move on from there. So these rules protect the workers, and they are allowed to bring up these health and safety concerns. It's a little bit of a repeat, but you want to train them, the workers. You want to make sure that they have the right equipment. You want to make sure that they sign their safety orientation. Another thing that's very important is safety orientation forms. You have a new worker that comes onto a job site. You want to make sure that worker has the OSHA certification. Let's say they're working on a scaffold. You want to make sure they're trained in scaffolding. If they're handling certain equipment or material, you want to make sure they're trained in that material or equipment handling. So what do? You prepare a safety orientation form, and with that form, you make them sign that they understood, they received the training and the equipment that you are supposed to provide as the employer, and they go to work. Now, if they get injured, they say, you didn't give me the equipment, you didn't give me the training, well, you got this document here that says I did give you the training and the equipment. So you want to protect yourselves as the employer, as the owner, as the GC. I'm just going to skip through this, and the employees have the right to examine if they're up on the OSHA code and they go to these classes, they have the right to examine and copy records, your safety records. So if they ask for those records and you refuse to give them, they can call OSHA. OSHA will come down and say, why didn't you give them the right to examine their own records? So make sure that you are aware of what the law says. And they can file confidential complaints. They can request their name not be revealed, and they have the right to pursue the action against you as the employer. They can also walk with the OSHA inspector. I've seen employees walk with their OSHA inspector. And they're allowed to talk to them privately. And usually when an OSHA inspector comes, he interviews or she interviews the parties individually, because they want to see if your stories match. So it's important that you're truthful, that you cooperate, and that you comply with the law. Let's see. So, having the right personal protective equipment, making sure that your records are up to date, making sure that you have a corporate health and safety program that's job specific. I've seen health and safety programs from 1980s that are on sites today. It's 2017. It's typed. The OSHA inspector knows when they see a typed health and safety program versus a computerized generated program. They'll say that, when was the last time you updated this program? It's important that you refresh your program on an annual basis or job specific. Some of you do work specifically in excavation or concrete foundations. Some of you are carpenters and electricians. Electricians have a very different hazard than, say, a concrete contractor. So your employees need to be trained in the right site-specific area they're working in. So you know, if there's an injury on site, you need to report it. Report each work-related hospitalization, amputation, or loss of eye, injury. Maintain those records and allow access for OSHA to access the records. The last thing you want to do is tell OSHA, which I've seen before, you're not allowed to come to my job site, come with a subpoena, and I'll give you the records. That's not the attitude you want to take with OSHA. You want to make sure that you welcome them in, that you have your records straight, and that you cooperate. And make sure you post your annual summaries on that OSHA 300 log. So there's 4 groups of standards. There's general industry, construction, maritime, and agriculture. So we'll stick with the construction. And I get a lot of, what's the difference between general industry and construction? Because OSHA 1910 and 1926 sort of cross over on each other. 1910 is sort of when the job is finished and you're a maintenance worker or a industrial worker where you're working in a factory or like a hotel like this. OSHA 1910 kicks in. I'm sure you know what 1910 versus 1926 is? 1926 is really what you're doing during an active construction site. So you can go online, look at OSHA. 1926 and 1910 overlap during the TCO phase or C of O phase. So, but 1926 is what you want to focus on. Just make sure also, I mean, this is talking about having the right equipment on site. Everybody here knows that you're supposed to furnish the right equipment for your employees. Helmets, eyeglasses. If you're doing concrete work, you want to have the apron. If you're doing welding, you're going to have the mask. You know, there's many things that you need to have: gloves, boots. If you want, you give somebody a stipend, give them a certain amount of money to go buy the equipment, and make them sign that you gave them a stipend for that equipment. Okay? But just make sure they have the equipment and it's not damaged. I've had incidents where I've inspected where somebody's goggles were scratched and they took them off and they got hit in the eye, lost an eye, and said, well, my goggles were scratched, that's why I took them off. What you want to do is have a foreman inspect the equipment, make sure the equipment is sound, and do that in your toolbox talk. You know what a toolbox talk is, right? It's supposed to have one weekly. In your toolbox talk, you could bring up incidents or discussions from the week, have everybody sign the toolbox talk. Once they sign the toolbox talk, they've recognized that they've been in the situation or understand the situation. It's just an extra layer of protection for you, and it's part of your documentation process for OSHA. So that you can go to the website, OSHA website, and pick up all these different codes. There's a good search tool, so if you have any questions or queries, you go into the search tool about ladders, scaffolding. And of course, OSHA can come onto the site at any time. It doesn't necessarily have to be an accident or an injury or a death. Anybody can call OSHA, even though they're understaffed. It doesn't mean that they won't come onto your job site. If somebody's very persistent, they'll be there. If the job site's union or non-union, it's more prevalent that if you're on a non-union site and you have a union picketing you, the chances of OSHA coming on site are increased. So when does OSHA really come on site and issue violations? Imminent danger situations, fatalities, hospitalizations, workers' complaints, and follow-up inspections. Follow-up inspections are very important. So if you're cited for a OSHA violation, it's important that you comply. It's important that you document that you've resolved the issue and close out the issue with OSHA. Don't leave it open-ended. So there's different violation types: willful, serious, other, and repeated. Willful will be something like you don't have any paperwork, you really don't care about safety, and the OSHA inspector comes on and hits you with a $70,000 fine. Serious is, listen, you tried, you weren't that great on your paperwork, however, it's a serious violation and we want you to correct it. It's much less of a fine, but they have the opportunity to repeat your fines and hit you with serious fines like 5 or 6 in a row. So that can mount up to $100,000. I just had a case where a contractor didn't really care about safety, and when we sat down with OSHA, it was $200,000 in fines. He got it. We did all his paperwork for him, had it reduced to $50,000. So it's a significant drop in the fine. However, if they come back again and he repeats it, they won't take him serious and they'll hit him with willful. And willful can carry criminal penalties too. So if you're a repeat willful offender, for lack of a better term, they'll come at you and they'll keep hitting you with higher and higher fines. So 70 will become 140, 500,000, serious fines. And then they'll have you on a website which says that you're a repeat and willful. So if your insurance company looks it up, which they do, they'll say, well, what's all these fines from OSHA? And they'll do a check on you. So that's the different things that OSHA does on their website. They give you compliance assistance, training, PowerPoints. And it's very important that you either have somebody in-house that's trained properly, or you have a third-party consultant come in and do a check on your company. or make sure that you have the right people running your company safely. So you can go to regional offices. There's one, I believe, in Tarrytown, which handles this area, and then New York City has one in Manhattan. And just to give you a snapshot of the most frequent injuries on a site, worker falls. Did you have your safety harness on? How many times do I see people that don't have a harness on, or people that do have it on but are not tied off, and they fall? So 43%. Other construction, that's various material falls. Material can be brick and block at the edge of a slab. Somebody's working underneath the slab, brick comes down, hits them in the head. Scaffold and shoring installations. Erecting scaffold is dangerous. Dismantling scaffold is dangerous. I'd say 8 out of 10 times people don't erect scaffold properly. It's missing toe boards, missing cross bracing, missing the proper supports. People use blocks and bricks to support a scaffold. Can't do that. You really need to get the right people to erect scaffold and dismantle scaffold, and you should have a competent person check the scaffold daily before somebody gets on it, and make sure that scaffold is clean every day at the end of the day. So no material can blow off in a high wind situation. If you're working in a residential neighborhood, kids are running around, the last thing you want is material to fly off your job and hurt somebody. So making sure that your scaffold is safe, it's netted properly, it's built correctly, and is maintained. Then of course you have your demolition and your excavation. I was just talking about this. Material storage, debris buildup, position of tools. It's important that we walk the site at least twice a day, morning and at the end of the day, to make sure the site is secure. All your guardrails are up, your floorboards are protected, everything's marked out properly. This site is illuminated because it's important for emergency services to make sure that the site is well lit. I've had contractors say, well, we don't work past 3 o'clock, so we don't need it lit. But when emergency service comes to the job site at 7 o'clock because some kid came on the site, they need to see the egress in and out of the site. So it's important that you have your site well lit. Yeah, these are the hazards. Illumination, lockout, tag out with your panels. Many times workers are working, they don't realize that a cord or a unit that they're working on is locked out, and they electrocute themselves. Vehicles on site, try to keep vehicles off the site. PPEs, big, helmets, goggles, gloves, vests. Be aware of your surroundings, and if it doesn't look right, bring it to somebody's attention. Hopefully your super doesn't just want to build the job fast and quick and under budget and ahead of schedule. He also has a safety component to that attitude. Your ladders. How many times do you all see ladders, A-frame ladders, being pushed against the wall as extension ladders? A-frame ladders are to be open, and you're not supposed to be on the top step. Extension ladders are supposed to be extended 3 feet past the deck and secured at the top and the bottom. Suspended scaffold, if you're working as facade contractors or you have a facade contractor, making sure that the tiebacks to the top of the roof are tied back properly, and to make sure that your suspended scaffold is set up properly and everybody's trained on a suspended scaffold. Suspended scaffold is much different than a supported scaffold. You have to be tied off on a suspended scaffold with an independent lifeline. Does everybody know how to set up an independent lifeline? I don't know. Probably not. But I got to tell you that one person on that job site has to know how to do it and make sure everybody else is safe and tied off properly. Supported scaffold, erecting and dismantling, we talked about that, having the right people do that. Trenching, your excavation, I know Tompkins is here, right? Excavation and trenching. Confined spaces. Confined spaces are a big deal. If you're working with Con Edison, you see Con Ed has that tripod set up. They go down a manhole. Well, a lot of people die in that manhole because of gas, cave-in. You're supposed to have a third person there. Confined space training is an important component. So make sure that when you're in confined space, and that doesn't just mean a manhole, it can be an excavation, it could be a basement, it could be under slab work. Make sure that you are properly trained in confined space. I mean, I can go on and on about it, but just know that it's a component of your training. And then, of course, we took job site photos here. You know, climbing a scaffold. There's certain scaffold that can be climbed. It's not this type of scaffold, but you cannot climb a scaffold on your cross braces. Ladders and lifts must be provided here. Access to a scaffold is very important. So then I just took some pictures here of, you know, what's the full hazard here. There's the full hazard. Greater than 6 feet while working near a stairwell opening. Guy can easily fall into that hole. Must be protected by either a guardrail system, a lifeline, harness, or a net underneath. Nobody ever does the net. But it's a good practice to have the harness tied off to an anchor point. And that anchor point has to withhold 5,000 pounds. So it should be engineered. Don't leave it up to some carpenter who thinks he knows what he's doing. It should be recognized where the anchor point is. Not tie it to a piece of rebar that can pull out. So unprotected sides, guardrail system, safety net, personal fall rest, I just said that. So many pictures we have that people working unsafely on job sites. And anybody passing that can call OSHA and say, listen, we got 2 roofers here working on a roof, not protected. Will OSHA come out? Maybe, if they're in the area. Where's the full hazard here? Let's see. The mid-rail toe board are missing. You know, just having a top rail is not good enough. You can slide and fall through a mid-rail with no toe board. Is a good one. Look how many block are on that scaffold, right? No guardrail, I'm sure I'm going to hit the thing. Exposed to a 35-foot fall hazard while stacking blocks, okay? Planks appear to be overloaded and there's no safe access. Have the scaffold engineered. Have it looked at by an engineer. Have an engineer design it. Have an engineer inspect it. Have a competent person look at it on a daily basis. Is this acceptable? Absolutely not. That thing's going to collapse. Here you go with the A-frame ladder, right? Must then extend 3 feet above the working surface, and that's not a sufficient height. That guy's working on the top step. I got it right. See? Let me look at that slide. These are terrible photos. I mean, this is residential, right? I mean, this is not high-rise construction, mid-rise construction. These are homes. This is how people work. Hopefully you don't work like this. There are many things wrong with this picture. No guardrail. Does not have proper access. I mean, an OSHA inspector comes to this job site. Job site's shut down probably for a month. And there's numerous violations being given out. Working on the edge, obviously, of a balcony. Fall hazard, unprotected edge. Here's a nice roofer working. Probably a summer day, right? He's tied off to his belt, I think. Yeah. Lifeline is tied to his waist. That's unacceptable. Okay? Another person worker at a height greater than 10 feet. These are all fall protection items. Fall protection is the #1 item of injury. Electrocutions. No employer shall permit a worker to work in such proximity to any part of electric power circuit that a worker could be in contact with the electric power circuit in the course of work. You see that power line? See that ladder against the power line? I mean, yeah, they're tied off the ladder, but it's not extending 3 feet past the deck. That's what I would say, right? But still, you're working next to an electric line. I mean, a high-powered voltage line. Here's an excavation for you. Crossing electric lines in the trench. See that line that comes across the trench? That has to be insulated, supported, and independent from that trench. It can be done, it just has to be planned properly. You know, frayed electric wires. Another thing, go through your job sites. All your electric cords on the job site, you're going to probably spend, I don't know, a couple of $1,000s on electric cords. Taping electric cords is unacceptable. It's not good. Unless you have an electrician, of course, certify that he did the work and that the repair was done by an electrician, which is probably cheaper to go buy an electric extension cord at that point. Your power tools cannot be taped. Any power tools wiring that's frayed has to be, unfortunately, taken out of service and repaired by a manufacturer or a repair shop. There's your open boxes, right? No GFI. All job sites have to have a GFCI, right? It's not grounded, open conductors, no cover boxes, no panel boards. Have your electrician set up the site properly. Have him or her go to the site, set up the panel, label the panel properly. Don't just put up an electric panel and say, "Here, that's where the power comes from." Label the panel with the electrician's name, live electric, lockout, tag out. Same thing with the cords down there. Damaged. Working next to a power line. 7.2 kV. You have metal, you can have arc flashing between the power line and that scaffold, that metal scaffold, and they will be electrocuted. Same thing, grounds not maintained, multiple extension cords plugged in improperly, no ground pin, conductors missing. So your electrician plays an important part in the beginning of a job, setting up the temporary power on your site. Most likely it needs a permit. Set up a pole. If you're tapping power from an adjacent site, you need a permit. Set up your temporary panel, your temporary box, and go from there. Running wires through doorways is prohibited because if you shut the door on the wire, you will get electrocuted. That's a good one. I don't know if this is America, but it could be. I've seen this in America, but I'm not. Okay. All caught between, it looks like he's caught between insulation, but technically talking about the equipment catching him. So, and again, when you're using equipment, unguarded belts, make sure all your tools that you buy have the protection that they came with. Everybody takes the covers off chop saws. Everybody takes the covers off grinders. Well, how can I grind? Everybody tells me. Put the cover on. It's made for that. They make different type of grinders for your application, so maybe you bought the wrong grinder is my response. It's true. Wear a face shield when you're grinding. I've seen pieces of, when they don't have the cover on, a piece of the grinder came off and lodged in somebody's cheekbone. And I had to take that person to the hospital. Getting caught, recognize the hazard here. Gloves, long sleeves, jewelry, or any loose-fitting clothing can be a hazard and caught between moving parts. That's a good one right there. Many things have a problem in this picture. Okay? I don't have to go through them all, but you see that right away, it's a problem. That's a problem. That's a container company, okay? There's no name on it. But you see what it is, right? Okay. I mean, even another thing is when you're bringing container companies in or concrete companies, make sure that they are doing their part in safety as well. Ask for their health and safety program. You ask for their insurance, I'm sure, or maybe you don't, but you should. What's their protocol for site safety on the job site? Are their workers trained properly? So it's your responsibility as the GC owner to make sure that these are material suppliers who are part of your team to be safe. Could be caught, right? That's a problem. I think he was caught. His pants were ripped. And the same thing with cranes. I don't know if you work with cranes, but that's a whole other ball game when it comes to cranes and tower cranes and crawler cranes, wrecking balls. If you do demolition, tying things off properly, the load ball. Here's this famous scaffold picture where you use block as a base for your scaffold, which is not proper. This is just a typical safety report that I've done for someone. Going through it gives you a good indication of how the job site's doing. We go through the typical who did I meet, what was the temperature and all that, and then you go through your administrative items. I check the administrative items on a job to make sure you're in compliance. I check to make sure that all your records are up to date and your health and safety training or records up to date. And then I go through the list: fire protection, stairs, elevated surfaces, personal protective equipment, ladders, welding, cutting, compressors, confined spaces, environmental conditions, hazardous substance communication, and electrical. That's just a few topics that I hit when I'm walking through a job site. And then I take my pictures, and I give you the OSHA reference typically, because you get everybody saying, well, that's not really a OSHA violation, and then I like to give them the section that I'm referring to. Now, plastic gas cans, big deal on the site. Can't have plastic gas cans on the site, not approved. And then you have your fall protection items coming off a suspended scaffold. This happens to be a particularly good site, but you all make mistakes, We all make mistakes. You just pick one or two things, and right away, they fixed it. Roof is not wearing hard hats. And then I give a little bit of a excavation. I saw an excavation that could have collapsed, and I like to prepare a little section in OSHA that talks about excavations in my report so that you can be educated on do you comply or not. And then I take pictures. Yes?
What was that highlighted material in yellow that we can't see?
For more information about establishing such a system, see page 18. That's all it says. Sorry about that. What I was referring to is another section of my report. And then there's the pictures of the excavation. I just didn't like that the excavation was piled up. It wasn't benched properly, so I just asked for them to have it analyzed, like you should bench it back at a 1-on-1 slope at least, or depending on the soil type, and they complied. And then I put some positive pictures in my report too. It's not all bad. It's, you have your tape and your hard hats and your protection, proper use of a ladder, tied off in the lift. And then I talk about other things. Then I talk about scaffolding. Everybody says, oh, we're trained in scaffolding, and I go through a job site and your planks are not tied down. Scaffold is too low, you can hit your head going up the scaffold, stuff like that. So it's good to have a third party look at it and not the same person on the job site every day as well. And in closing, these are some of our services. I believe that you have brochures on your tables. When it comes to management, safety management, mostly in New York City, we do high-rise construction safety, and we have qualified people. We do a lot of expediting in New York City as well. Engineering-wise, we do site safety planning and drawings. So if you have any situations where you need an engineering opinion or an inspection or special inspection, we can do special inspections as well, engineering-wise. And of course, our training program, we have a training center in White Plains. We can come to your job site to train as well. 4-hour scaffolds, 7-hour safety manager refresher, 16-hour scaffolds, 32-hour, 40-hour site safety manager. I believe the 40-hour site safety manager covers a lot of the New York City code and federal OSHA code, so that's probably the best program to go with. And then you have your typical OSHA training, your FDNY training, and Red Cross training we do. Any questions? No OSHA questions. Eric, yes.
You have a slide where you have a scaffold next to a power line.
Yeah.
You make a comment that you could get electrocuted.
Yep.
Talk about that a little more.
Well, there's a certain, depending on the amount of power in the line, there's a certain distance you have to be away from the power line when you're using a metal scaffold or working next to a power line. So usually the power company will come out and insulate the line so you don't have arc flash to your scaffold. But you have to analyze that prior to doing what you're doing, like erecting the scaffold. So, you will have the utility company insulate those lines. And especially if you're building a steel structure, you want to make sure you're far away or the right distance away from that electric line.
Is there a rule of thumb?
There is. I can give you a chart, but I don't know how much power is running through the line.
Right.
And the utility company is the best person to come out, or a company to come out and analyze that situation for you. And they'll put up that protection. So it's required under law that they do it for you. They might. I don't know. I think they're required. Yeah? Well, I like to say it's cheaper than somebody getting electrocuted. I don't know how much they would charge, but definitely should be set up properly. Yes?
Are you finding, and I know you're in the private sector, are you finding increase or decrease in enforcement as of, let's say, the beginning of the year?
Yes, well, you're talking about Westchester County?
I'm talking about your experience overall across state lines, multiple municipalities.
Right. In New York City, I can say that they're creating local laws every day for safety enforcement. So what used to be minimal training is now is 40 hours, 50 hours worth of training per employee. That's a local law in New York City. I'm also seeing that our reports become, from 2 pages, they become 13 pages. I also see that local municipalities now are starting to enforce a safety during construction code in the New York State Code, which is the IBC code, Chapter 33, safeguards during construction. And the local municipalities here in Westchester are starting to enforce that more because of pedestrian accidents, unsightly construction sites. So enforcing a fence. Let's say, for instance, most of these site fences are either collapsed, open to the public. The local municipalities are starting to write tickets and enforce that section of the code.
On the federal side, what do you see?
Federal, I think they're understaffed still. I don't think they're funded. I think they're a little bit, they were defunded, I believe, a little bit. So, but that's like roulette, you know. Inspector could come out at any time. So just be ready. I mean, paperwork is the most important thing, and have the right training, and then things will happen for you, you know, in the right direction.
So you have to approach it the Boy Scout or Girl Scout way, be prepared.
Be prepared. That's my advice to you. And it starts with that program. I don't know if you all have the same, you know, the program that we just passed around, but this is your base, starting point. If you have this, you can build upon this for site-specific work. If you're growing as an organization, if you started small, now you're becoming bigger, this is going to be more important to you as an organization. Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much.
Michael, many thanks for your excellent presentation, and also, once again, many thanks to Denise Groneman of Certified Site Safety for helping us coordinate this program. That concludes our seminar. We thank you all for attending, and we hope to see you at our next breakfast event.